Welcome, everyone, to Music Junkies, a podcast about people sharing extraordinary stories about how music has impacted their lives.
Welcome, everyone, to Music Junkies. I'm your host, Annette Smith, and we have a special guest today, right? Rich Chambers. When I reached out to you, I was like, this guy is awesome. I love it. I love that you're a singer and you're a songwriter and producer. And I just took this little quote from what you said, and it was like, your music ranges from retro rock to modern rock to country to blues, many styles in between. But this was the key thing that I loved. And you said it was just simply rock and roll. And I love that you said that, just the way you said that. And I'm a huge believer that we need to bring some rock and roll back. So I'm glad that you are doing that. So welcome to the show, Rich. I appreciate having you here.
Thank you, Annette. And I love how you that segue in. Thank you for the introduction, because I'm a huge believer in plain old rock and roll. A lot of people don't use that term anymore. And what I found extremely interesting, and this is quite fascinating, once I started really doing this music portion the last couple of years and getting my music out there, people would ask, Rich, so you're rock. What kind of rock are you? Are you garage rock, indie rock, modern rock, progressive rock? And they go on and on and on. And I'd say, well, no, yes, no, yes, no, to almost everything. And finally I said, what's wrong with just rock? And I've had many people rock. They kind of do that. And I say rock and roll. And because in the birth of rock and roll in the 50s was an amalgamation of many different styles when it came out, and a bunch of reviewers and radio disc jockeys coined the term rock and roll. Bill Haley in the comments came out, what was that, Blackboard Jungle? That song, he was huge on Blackboard Jungle, and it was a wave and phenomenon that sort of hit North America to start and the rest of the world. And rock and roll is amalgamation of the blues and country particularly. There's a lot of big bands in there. There's a lot of folk music in it. And that's where rock and roll came from. And I think as rock and roll has evolved into many different styles, I say there's still a huge amount of people that want to hear the roots of what rock and roll is. But let's hear it with today's styles mixed in there as well.
Yeah.
So you nailed it. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah. And your music totally is. So what was your experience being an artist and trying to put a playlist together? Right. Obviously, most artists want to put all their music in there. I love that, and I'm okay when they do, but I love that you didn't, because then we get to kind of dissect a little bit about what other artists mean to you and other songs mean to you. So how was it kind of not adding too many of your own songs, but actually adding other artists to your playlist?
Well, and it was a great exercise when you email me and say, Rich, here's the format of the podcast, and I'd like you to make a list of your own songs. And homework. I haven't been to school for a while. I like this. I was one of those losers that actually kind of like school. Anyway, but I started by putting a couple of my own songs on. I thought, no, wait a second, Rich. Your songs are the end result of a whole bunch of other pieces of music that have influenced you and started you down this journey. So look at some of the songs that influenced you and started you on the journey. I picked songs that I first heard when I was a wee, small, little young guy, and other songs that hit me in my teens and some of my 20s and 30s. And a couple of them have just funny stories behind them, but they're all impactful in a certain way. I wouldn't say they're my favorite songs, but they're some of the most impactful songs that I've experienced.
Yeah, I love that. And we're going to get started with your first song. Are you ready?
Let's go. Let's give her.
Right. So that's obviously your song, Santa Rock Band. So tell me a little bit about that song, how it came about.
What was that song again? I can't remember. Who was that guy? Now, actually, I'm glad you did that song first, because it's called Santa's Rockin' Band. And now all my Facebook and Instagram handles are both at Santa's Rockin' Band. And I've had a few people say, well, why did you choose that? And I said, because Santa's Rockin' Band was my first original commercial release that I ever did back in the mid 90s when I was fresh out of university. And so I have a certain soft spot for that song because of that release. It was my first ever commercial release. But another thing that I brought it forth is because it's a great sort of example of my songwriting technique and where my songwriting comes from. One, I'm a huge Christmas fan. And I loved all the crazy Christmas specials, The Grinch and Frosty the Snowman. I loved all that little cheesy bubblegum music that came in those songs. I thought it was wonderful stuff. So there was one day, and this is kind of a funny story, that the one day I was about to go for a run. And I thought, I don't know why I was thinking this. I thought to myself, you know, if Santa had a band, Frosty would have to be the bass man. There's something about, you know, the big Frosty there, he's playing away on the bass, and there's something kind of cool about that. And I thought to myself, yeah, but he plays so hot, he melts his hands. So I thought, that's kind of funny. And then I start jogging, and I said to myself, well, Frosty's the bass man. You got to make Rudolph the drummer. He got the unique nose, and, you know, he'd sit and bang away on the drums and light his nose every time he hit the snare drum. And I thought, you know, he has to be the drummer. And then I thought, well, if we're going to do a traditional bebop sort of 60s song, and we'd have, you know, Mrs. Claus would be there rattling the tambourine, singing in the background, and all the elves would jump up and play various guitars. And Santa would be kind of conducting, clapping away, and leading the band. And so I thought, you know, it's Santa's rockin' band. And I'm still running. I'm doing this while I'm running. I think, that's kind of cool. So then I quickly, in the middle of the jog, I quickly started working out an actual melody to the song itself. So in a 30-minute, you know, 7 kilometer jog, I wrote this entire song in my head. As soon as I got home, I got the guitar out, I got a pen and paper, and quickly wrote down all the lyrics and all the notes and chords and everything, and got it down as quick as I could so I didn't forget it. And I think what makes the story even more funny is that it was middle of July in a heat wave. So what the heck was I doing thinking about Frosty? No wonder he was melting his hand. But it's funny how that's not how I typically write a song. And I love that moment because it was like the thunderbolt of lightning hit me, you know, whoa, moment of inspiration. It's all there. I got to get it down. I mean, most of the time songwriting is 5 minutes of inspiration and 95% hard work, another 4 or 5 hours playing with chords and structures and melodies and making the song work. But once in a while I get blasted with that. It all comes to me fast, quick, and easy. Santa's Rockin' Band was one that did. And it's a great story. And I just love the story, and I love playing the song, and I love having it out every Christmas.
I love it. What was your very first instrument that you learned how to play?
Well, I'm still holding out on that one. Maybe I'll learn one eventually. It was the guitar. My dad played the guitar, and it was inspired me to pick up a guitar myself and be like Dad. So that was the first one.
Do you remember your first song that you learned that you were so excited to learn?
Yes, the Beatles' Day Tripper.
Yeah.
You know, I spent an hour and a half learning that riff, and I think I drove my mom and dad crazy with how much I played it for 4 or 5 weeks before I learned something else.
Did you and your dad play together? Like, did he teach you how to play? Or
no, he didn't. At the time I started playing guitar seriously, Mom and Dad had split up. So we never actually sat down and played guitar together. And crazy, to this day, we still have not, we've played guitar. We've been on events, and there's been one guitar we've traded back and forth. But if you can believe it, this many years later, we've never actually sat and played in the same room together, which is something I want to do before he passes on. So he's getting up there in age, so we got to get it done.
Yeah. And how, you know, I look at my daughter, just my husband plays guitar, and his grandma played guitar, and his dad plays guitar.
Yeah.
And his father gave our daughter his grandma's guitar, right? And my daughter is kind of sitting down in the basement, and it's like driving him crazy because like he wanted that guitar, right? So I'm like, just call her and like play guitar together. Like it's that simple, right? So it's funny how something so simple to go and do, but yet we don't do it.
I know. Crazy. But I have a soft spot. My dad and I share that guitar thing. So that's definitely, and it runs in families, like you just said right there. And often you talk to people and you find out that music doesn't, sometimes it strikes one person and they're the first in the family. Often it's a family line of musicians or music lovers that get people into music.
Yeah, I love it. All right, next song.
Okay.
All right, the Monkees.
I am a huge Monkees fan.
Are you?
And I'm a huge Monkees fan, and I hate it when people dump on the Monkees. Yes, they were a manufactured band, but the 4 musicians in the band were legitimate quality musicians and heck of a good songwriters, all of them. And I was kind of sad when Michael Nesmith died recently, passed on. He was an excellent musician and songwriter, great producer too. But why this hits home for me is I can remember being only like 4 or 5 years old, 6 years old, and the Monkees were syndicated and reruns were all over the place. So I was watching the Monkees, and I remember this song stuck out more than anything. And I saw the video of them running around on a steam train, and some evil black dude was chasing them, and all in black. And I still remember that. And I was only 5 or 6 years old at the time. And I remember the song really resonated with me. For whatever reason, at that age, I thought this is an awesome, cool song. And I've been a Monkees fan ever since. And kind of a funny story too is I was watching the Monkees and really into them. And I'm digging through my mom's record albums. And I love this. I pulled out Hard Day's Night with the pictures of the 4 Beatles. And I went to my mom and said, who are these guys copying the Monkees? Little did I know, my mom kind of laughed and said, oh, well, son. And she tried to explain it to me. I thought, oh, these guys are carbon copies. The Monkees are more cool. So, I had that a little backwards at the time. But I'm a huge Monkees fan. Always have been and still am.
Did your parents listen to a lot of music when you were growing up?
Yes, and part of why I have such a wide influence is my mom was a massive top 40 fan, huge Beatles fan. My dad loved Waylon Jennings, Johnny Cash, Willie Nelson. He was a huge country fan. And the two of them would often, my dad would pick up guitar and they'd sing songs with other family members. And the whole gauntlet of country, pop, and rock came out. So I found as I got older, it wasn't too far a stretch to suddenly dip into B.B. King and Muddy Waters and Dean Martin. And, it wasn't that far a stretch. And I started enjoying all types of music. So it started with mom and dad having a fairly eclectic musical tastes.
Yeah. So who has been in your guitar career so far? Who has been the hardest person to learn how to play their guitar music?
Great question. Well, I can do a bit of Hot for Teacher, Eddie Van Halen, and I stop right there, a bit. I don't know if I'd bother. Eddie is one of the best. Others that are amazing, Prince is because he was such a good songwriter. People don't realize what an amazing guitar player he was. I don't know if I could touch some of his stuff. Stevie Ray Vaughan really got me going into guitar. One of the songs is on here because of that. And these are people that I consider masters. I will take bits and pieces, but I won't try and copy. I can't. There's no other Eddie Van Halen. I'm not even going to try.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I play drums, so I could never do Hot for Teacher on the drums part either. So I'm with you.
That double kick drum, I don't know how the heck he did it. I mean, wow, what an amazing band in their heyday. No question.
Yeah, I love it. All right. Next song. I think you know this guy pretty well.
Yeah, who is that guy? Good looking guy.
That's you. I'm so tired. I love it. I love that song.
I'm so tired. Now, this is interesting. I put this on here for 2 reasons. One, it was a song that catapulted me into, okay, Rich, it's time to go after this full time. It was my first non-Christmas release, and I'd mastered some of my production techniques and really kind of upped them to the next level. And I was ready to go for production-wise and recording-wise and everything else-wise. I finally hit a level where I was happy with what I was putting out, and I sort of hit that radio-friendly sound. But more so than that is I wrote this between Christmas and New Year's of, I guess, 2019. Is that right? I'm trying to remember. COVID messed up everybody's dates. It's a time warp through COVID. Yeah. So anyway, it was 2019 or 2020. But anyway, it was between Christmas and New Year's. This is right before the crazy stuff happened in Washington, D.C. on January 6th or 7th, and the Trump rally and all those, and they stormed Capitol Hill. And I wrote the song in about 7 days, recorded it all, and I had it recorded completely done when Capitol Hill was stormed. And I had this song called "I'm So Tired." I thought to myself, did I have a moment of a prophetic moment here? I didn't realize, is this whole COVID thing and everything just got me frustrated and tired, and I'm just pissed off with everything. And I realized that what I was saying personally was actually what a lot of people were feeling. So I put a video together that was basically a social media video together. I pulled all kinds of clips and pieces from social media showing unrest, showing rallies, showing protests, showing things, some things I agree with, some things I didn't agree with. But the overall arching theme behind my video and the song itself is how fed up we are as a society with everything. And I used the video, I closed the video with a quote from Lincoln from the Gettysburg Address, where he actually talks about a government for the people, we the people for the people kind of thing. And the idea that people have a voice and people want to be heard. And us as a society want the powers that be to work with us and hear us. And you see a whole lot of that going on in Russia right now. The amount of people that hit the streets protesting, knowing damn well they're going to get thrown into jail, but they're out there protesting because they don't like what their government is doing. And hopefully, as a collective whole, we the people can get things to happen in a positive way, get the whole Ukraine thing resolved, finished, and a whole bunch of other things. So I'm so tired came with just being simply, I'm so tired. There's no other way to really say it. And it's a hard edge rock and roll song with a sort of nod to Eddie Cochran and some of the early rockers. And I'm very proud of it and the video itself.
Yeah, it's a great song. I loved it.
Thank you.
How do you usually come up with your material? I know sometimes you talked about a little bit there that sometimes you get hit by inspiration, but is it mostly past events that make you get in that writing theme, or how do you usually come up with your material?
Well, there's a few different ways. One, I'm extremely fortunate, and then I can sit down and tell myself, okay, Rich, I'm going to write a song today. What's it going to be? I pick a theme and I get my mind and self and my psyche into that mode. So I'm very, very fortunate I can do that. And sometimes, and very interesting enough, those songs can be just as personal. Sometimes they add a little bit of anecdotes that, when it's a very personally charged song, I don't discover. So that's one side. The other side of the coin is, for instance, I'm So Tired started with that guitar riff, which is kind of an aggressive rock and guitar riff. I had my guitar on, the distortion was quite loud. And I wrote all the music, and like I do most of the time, how the music makes me feel or how I'm feeling when I wrote the music dictates what kind of lyrical content is going to be in the song. So rarely do I start with lyrics first. Santa's Rockin' Band was a bit of an abnormality for me in that sense. So it usually starts with a mood and a theme, musical theme, and then the lyrics come last.
I like it. And most people are kind of opposite, aren't they? Where they come up with the song and then they try to figure out what music is going to go well with that.
Lots of writers will do that. I know I've heard mixed reviews, and I was even years ago, I went to a songwriting camp, and the person writing the camp, I forget who he was, but a very good songwriter. And he taught us all how to write from a lyric first. And even though I went through the workshop, it didn't resonate with me. I saw some validity in it for sure, but it didn't quite resonate with me. Yeah. Mind you, every now and then, like I have a Santa's Rockin' Band. That was such a great line. I had to make a song around that one. So,
I love it.
And other times I had the song Summer Looks So Good on You, which I didn't put on this list, was another song that I wrote around that title. Because sometimes a lyric is so strong that it deserves a song. But that's only a small percent of the time for me. Most of the time it's music first.
Yeah. So thinking of lyrics, is there a lyric of any song out there that you've heard that has just always just stuck with you?
I've never been asked that before. That's a very, very good question. There's lots of different, I'd have to, in the moment when I hear certain songs, well, I can tell you one. Actually, we were talking about this a little before we started the recording. You said, "Oh, Rich, if you feel like swearing, you can swear whatever you want. Go for it." One line that always sticks out in my head is Lenny Kravitz, "Mr. Cab Driver," because, in my opinion, too many people, F this, F that, everything else, that completely downplays the power of such an emphatic, heavily awesome adjective. If used properly, it can be used properly as a verb or whatever, but it's such a powerful word when used properly. And Mr. Cab Driver, fuck you, I'm a survivor. Hell yeah, Lenny Kravitz. That's power. That's using fuck you with power. Right. So Facebook did it. The hell with that crap. It has no meaning whatsoever. You're completely desensitizing a very, very powerful word when used properly. And Lenny Kravitz, that's always stuck in my head. I'm a huge Lenny Kravitz fan. And that song, Mr. Cab Driver, when he uses that song or that particular word, Alanis Morissette, are you thinking of me when you fuck her? I mean, that's hardcore. That just grinds us all right there. That's swear words used properly.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I swear a lot, but I can't handle that kind of stuff. I'm just like, why are you swearing so much? Like it's
when it becomes a regular part of your vernacular, then it's useless. It's just useless.
Yeah, it kind of seems very trashy.
Yeah. Takes away the power. It's a powerful word.
Yeah, I love the way you said that. Takes away the power. Right, next song.
All right, okay. Very good to see you down in New Orleans, man. Yeah,
So Wings.
Listen to what the man said. 1974. I'm a huge McCartney fan, huge Beatles fan. I finally got to see McCartney a few years ago at BC Place in Vancouver. But that song, why it's on the list, not a heck of a lot of story to it, other than it was my first 45. 45.
Oh,
For
nice.
those of you who were born in the digital age, I don't know if you remember 45. Now LP vinyl's big again, but I don't think 45s have come back. It was my first 45, and I still have it in its little sleeve with McCartney and Wings, and I still have it, and I still remember that. And my mother bought me The Night Chicago Died by Paper Lace. So I'm barely into music. I'm not even sure if I was in kindergarten yet. But it was a cool moment, and I still have both those 45s somewhere in a closet. So there's my introduction to the world of pop music was Paper Lace and Paul McCartney.
Do you have a favorite audience that you've played for so far in your career?
Well, yes, I'd have to say there's been a couple audiences. One for pure fun was we used to play a regular gig at a frat house when our band played years ago. We played couple of times every year. We'd go to a frat house. The Togas would come out. If you've ever seen Animal House, it looked just like that. We were in this basement, low ceiling basement with about 150 people, maximum 50, but somehow 150 got in there. And we would play to this jam-packed crowd. And those are the nights where we weren't playing for any money. We played for pints of beer. And well, actually, we probably racked up a good bill on that one. But they were so much fun. And then there's the most impactful gigs that we ever used to do. And we used to go every Christmas for many years. We'd go to children's hospitals here in Vancouver. We'd go to and hospices, and we go to the Canuck Place, which is a amazing hospital for terminally ill children, and when they're receiving treatment. And we went to a place called Sunny Hill Hospital, which is now part of Vancouver BC Children's Hospital, and they were dealing with severely disabled kids. And then we went to Children's Hospital as well. And we used to do gigs every Christmas at these places. And talk about impactful. I still have, our drummer still has a letter from a little girl there was a foul up. We went to Canuck Place, and there was only one girl there. It was right before Christmas. And all the rest of the kids that were able, they went home for the holidays. But this one poor little girl was too sick to get home. So her parents were there with her. And we played for her only. And she sat on the floor and played a few toys and everything and listened. And her parents were there. And she passed away in late January the next year. And we got a letter in February from her mother. And she went on and on about what an amazing night that was. She thanked us profusely for how we'd taken our time to play for her daughter. And she said, sadly, her daughter's passed on, but her spirit lives on. And it just kind of chokes you up thinking about it. But it's that moment where you realize the power that music has. There's so much power in music. And I want to continue that. I want to keep, if I can make a person smile or make a little girl, a little boy happy for a moment, or somebody at any age. I got an email the other day from a woman in using Google Translator. My latest single, my song "We're Staring at Beatles" cover, is actually taking off in Mexico. I'm getting a ton of people messaging me from Mexico. Thank goodness for Google Translator, because I don't speak Spanish. And I was talking to this one grandmother who was telling me through Google Translator, her two grandsons are 5 and 6, and they're dancing to my song. They love my song. They're playing it over and over again. Had them all just going, wow, that makes it all worthwhile. Yeah. That's great stuff.
Yeah, I love that. That's it's such a nice feeling. And I feel like it always comes on sometimes the day that you're down, like me and you were having those conversations. Yes. And you know what, that was my very first time when I did a recording on somebody, and they said that they didn't want me to air their podcast, that they didn't like the direction my podcast was going, because there was some sex posts like a week prior. And I thought, okay, first of all, you have no idea who I am and what I'm doing. And our podcast that we did was really, really good. Mm-hmm. Just have a conversation with me. Don't send this kind of blanket email that's not really explaining yourself. Yeah. And it was really disappointing, because I was having a sex educator on my podcast that I was releasing on Monday. So that's why there was all of this sex stuff. And it's who I am too. So like, don't tell me how to run my podcast. Do your research before. That's why but it put me in a different state where I was like, oh my God, like, I'm fine with having haters. I'm totally fine with that. But when somebody is like saying that you're doing something that you're not,
yes,
I don't like that stuff. Like, you're posting something to get likes, or you're Like, that's not what
Yeah.
I'm doing at
Yeah.
all. I love doing this. I love dissecting music. I love meeting new people. So don't tell me I'm doing this because I'm doing it for some other reason. When we didn't have that relationship when I did your podcast. So it just kind of blew me away. And then you were such a fresh air. You know, you came in, you were super excited.
Thank you.
And my husband was just like, who cares? You're going to get people like that. And he goes, and then you're upset. And here's this guy like giving you all this light and joy. And I'm like, yeah, I got to remember that. So it was just so refreshing. And I appreciated our conversation. And I was just so excited to
Oh, thank you.
have you on
Thank
the
you.
show. Just because like for that little reason, you just have to remember why you're doing
Yeah.
something, right? I'm sure have you ever died on stage before?
Stage is a different beast for me. I'm able to. There's times where I've had pennies thrown at me. I've been playing to absolutely nobody in the crowd before, and then a couple people maybe mocking me. I had one guy come up once, literally about 2 feet away from my face, listening. He thought I was lip syncing. He almost got a neck of my guitar into his face that time, but I was afraid of actually hurting my guitar, so I didn't do it. So yeah, I've had all things, and you learn to kind of persevere through it.
Yeah.
And I put on when I get on stage, there's a certain ironclad comes over me. Most of the time I don't see the audience because I zone it out and I get in my own space and just, here's what I got to do, Rich. Here's what you do. Here's what comes naturally, and away you go. And any performer will often tell you that when I'm singing and performing, I'm always about a half second ahead of where I'm actually doing. My brain's a half to a second ahead of what I'm actually doing on stage. So my brain's, what's the next line, Rich? What's the next chord? You have to get ready for the solo. Bump your volume. Try and signal the bass player to play lower. And all this stuff's going through your head while you're singing the song. And it becomes such a mental exercise that after a while, you don't care what's going on in the crowd. Well, you do and you don't, because that becomes part of it. You still have to play to the crowd.
Yeah.
But you don't let them bring you down. That's what it boils down to.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. All right, next song. I haven't heard this song forever.
Yes.
We were listening to your playlist the other day, and my husband loves that I do this because I find all this music that maybe I haven't heard for a long time or he's never heard of. And I haven't heard Pink Houses Forever for a long time, probably like 7-8 years. And right away, I'm like, oh, babe, you got to learn this song. This is a great acoustic song. You got to learn it.
Yes, it is.
I love it. I love it.
It's it's one of those songs, desert island song. It might be number one, might be my number one favorite song ever written. That and John Lennon's Happy Xmas War is Over. Those two go hand in hand. But Pink Houses, when I first heard Pink Houses, I was literally blown away. For one thing, I love that acoustic sound. This song could sound great with just an acoustic guitar player. I've heard Mellencamp do it with just an acoustic guitar player, and it's amazing. It doesn't lose anything. In fact, in some ways, it gains. But it was also one of my first sort of inkling to, you can be a poet and a songwriter at the same time. Mellencamp's lyric goes way beyond the surface of what you just read. I mean, the metaphor for what Pink Houses and what's going on there is nuts. To the point I can remember watching Ronald Reagan during his 1984 campaign tried to get Mellencamp to release the rights because he wanted to use it. Ain't That America was the big line he wanted to use for his campaign. And Mellencamp said, no bloody way am I letting you take this song. That's not what this song is about. It's not celebrating American. It's celebrating the average American. So the average person. Yeah. And their hopes and dreams of what's so hard about trying to make it in the United States, and the fact, and it's very prophetic because there is such a subculture of poverty in the United States. And there's so many Americans that are trying so hard to get ahead. And that's sort of what he was getting after with Pink Houses. And here's the dream of a pink house and this wonderful picket fence, but not everybody can attain it. Yeah. Even though no matter how hard you try and work. So amazing songwriter, amazing poet. And then after Mellencamp, oddly enough, Mellencamp was first. Many people think I got into Springsteen first, but Mellencamp was my first poetic songwriter. And then I followed Springsteen soon after. No wonder the two are actually good buddies. Because Springsteen's also an amazing rock and roll poet, amazing poet.
Yeah, I absolutely. Yeah, and I used to listen to so much, because my aunt used to listen to Mellencamp all the time. So I listened to so much Mellencamp growing up. And so it was cool just to kind of go down that memory lane too.
Cool. And yeah, it's just a good song, regardless of the lyrical content. It's a good song.
So are you married, single, hunting?
I'm single at the moment.
Okay, nice. How
Yeah.
long have you been single for?
Oh, this is new, Annette. This is like only 6 months.
Oh, okay. Long
Yeah,
term.
so I don't know how to date. It's been so long, I've forgotten. I don't know what the hell to do.
Were you in a relationship for a long time?
20 years married.
20 years?
20 years and two very,
Wow.
very wonderful boys later. So
Crazy. So this is totally new. What kind of women do you look for? Like, what is your ideal woman?
oh, authentic,
Yeah.
sincerity, little bit endless amounts of energy would go well with me because I don't slow down. I keep going like crazy. So yeah, can't be a smoker. I'm not into the smokers. It's not my thing. And athletic, likes to exercise, likes to stay busy. That's all, similar. You look for similar traits that you have, but not too similar. You don't want to be the exact same. You got to complement each other.
That's right. All right,
But
folks.
authenticity is the big one. Authenticity and sincerity.
Yeah, I agree. Single, are you mingling or not yet?
I've been so busy. I mean, I haven't had a chance to mingle. I'm basically working 2 full-time jobs. I go to my first job at a university during the day where I write and edit business reports and university reports. Then I come home and I do podcasts with people like you, and I get on social media and I write and record and I market, and I got all kinds of radio promoters out, and I got various PR people doing work for me, and it's a full-time job. I absolutely loving it. Don't get me wrong. I'm having the time of my life. I should have done this years ago, but everything has its time and place.
Yeah.
And I started this huge music push 2 years ago. A middle-aged rocker. I mean, instead of getting a convertible and a young girlfriend, I bought a guitar and started writing more songs. So and I bust the midlife crisis thing to hell on this. I've created a new midlife crisis scenario.
I'm sure we can find you a stalker, so don't worry. All right, next song. Partridge Family, I Think I Love You.
I think
do not
I
know
love
how
you.
long
I
it's
am a huge David Cassidy fan. Always have been. Once
That
again,
was my first LP that you said that. That is so
yes.
funny. My first vinyl, and he was spread out on the vinyl album, like
Oh yeah, he's doing the pose, and he's showing a little bit of skin there. I mean. And man,
I think you'll like this album. I'm like, oh my god, what are you doing?
I look at the old clips, and girls went nuts for David Cassidy. Absolutely crazy, throwing themselves at him, and thousands. But David Cassidy, I saw him in concert about 5 or 6 years before he passed away. And he was a great performer and a great vocalist, underrated because once again, he was part of a manufactured group, the Partridge Family, who were terrible lip syncers, by the way. But and it's kind of funny because he got cast on the show for his acting ability, and they initially weren't going to have him sing, and they were doing some like outtakes, and they were doing some preparation clips, and he was on stage with a guitar lip syncing, and it was plugged into the actual amp. So he plugged it in at the end of the tape recording. He turned on the guitar amp and started playing. And suddenly the producers realized, holy crap, this guy really can sing and play. We don't just have to get him to fake it. He can do it. So then they actually got him recording the music, and the guy has a great voice. And he was a pretty good guitar player too. So, but I love it because it was my introduction to bubblegum pop. And I love bubblegum pop. Other stuff like the Archie, sugar, honey, honey. And more recently, get in the 90s with Hanson and bop, bop, bop. I can't even remember the whole song. And there was Mambo number 5. This is all bubblegum pop, really light surface, but infectious melodies. Bay City Rollers, SATURDAY, night. Oh, Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey, Mickey, Tony Basil. It's all bubblegum. It's surface, it's light, but it's fun.
Yeah.
And I try and put an element of bubblegum into a lot of my music because that stuff sticks in your head. And music sometimes doesn't have to be the hardcore message. Sometimes it can just simply be fun.
Just be fun. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you need that. I think you need both.
Yeah.
But sometimes if you just want to clean the house or just go do something, take your mind off of something, you need that stuff.
Yes.
It forces you to sing and not think about something, because songs trigger so many different emotions.
Yes.
You're having a
Yes.
bad day, a breakup, you don't go put Guns N' Roses Patience on. Right?
No.
You might cry, you might not get anything done. You need to go and listen to something that's gonna, get you out of that mindset.
Yeah, you put the bubblegum pop on. Sugar, Sugar by the Archies. You cannot smile listening to that song.
You
So
have
I
any
love bubblegum pop.
I do too. Do you have any pet peeves, Rich?
Not many. I have a hard time thinking about it. Pet
Yeah.
peeves often, I think, are self induced. In other words, people often, why do you let something, you have a pet peeve because you're letting something bother you. Don't let it bother you. Sometimes it's that simple.
It is that simple, right? You're giving somebody control over your
Yep.
emotion.
Taking away control. That's actually a good way of putting it. Yeah, you're giving control to somebody else. Take control back and say, screw it. I'm not letting that bother me.
That's right.
Unless it directly affects you. Then you have to deal with it. You don't let it bother you. You deal with it, which is an entirely different thing.
Yeah, I agree. So it sounds like you've kind of seen a lot of concerts. What's been your favorite concert so far?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, this is a great question. What can I actually say? My favorite concert. I'd have to think about that. I've got so many. BB King might have been one of the. I saw
That would
BB
be
King shortly
amazing.
after Expo '86 in Vancouver. My friend and I got into the pub. It was crazy. This is a crazy story. We're lining up outside, waiting to get into this club, and it was a very intimate club. Before he'd done the U2 thing and went to big sort of amphitheaters, and he was in smaller clubs. And we were waiting in line to get in, and we were just 19 years old, just old enough to be drinking. And we had two friends of ours that couldn't make it, so we're holding their tickets. And these two guys in front of us are saying, "Oh, I hope you can get tickets when we're up there." And I looked at my buddy and I said to these guys, "Guys, the tickets are pre-sold. There's none to be bought." But we got two in our hands, and they were so thankful. They gave us like $10, $20 over ticket price. So my buddy and I walk in, and we have all this excess money. The tickets already been paid for. Our friends that couldn't come had already given us money. So we're into a drinking establishment with BB King and excess money. You can only imagine what happened. We'll have one of this, and one of this to start, please. And we were maybe 20 feet away from him. And we were going so crazy. By the end of the night, he called us up to the stage, gave us a pin, shook our hands, and said, "Thanks for being fans." And I just had that moment, oh my God, this was awesome. I'll never forget that concert. I was just 19, but I was so into it and couldn't believe that. And he was just so thankful for how into the music we got. And I'm still into. I saw BB King about 4 or 5 times after that before he passed away. Amazing musician, awesome storyteller. I hope to one day be able to come close to telling stories the way he did. But huge impact on my guitar playing with BB King, no question.
Yeah, I love how artists can do that. It's a real show, right?
Yes.
Play guitar, tell a story, right? I think Garth Brooks does that a lot as well.
Yeah.
It's very intimate. It makes you feel like you are doing, he's singing the concert to you, not that there's 7,000 other people in the room. I love that feeling. I love
it's like you're sitting, he's like he's having a beer with you and he's telling you the story. That's what it felt like. So it was an amazing concert. I've seen many great concerts, but that one, at the top of my head, that one sticks out.
What was the worst concert you ever seen?
The worst. That's a tougher one. And I hate to say this because I'm a big fan of him, but Hank Williams Jr. was one of the worst. And partly because it was way too loud. I couldn't believe how loud he was. And I just couldn't enjoy it. It was over the top loud for me. I'm a guitar player. I like loud music. But I was so surprised with how loud Hank Williams Jr. was. And he just kind of I should say, actually, Hank did a better job than Bob Seger. And I hate saying that because I'm a huge Bob Seger fan. But I saw Bob Seger and he just came on stage, did his concert, walked off, no encore. He was there for did maybe 70, 80 minutes. I was not impressed. I'm still a Bob Seger fan, but that one, and I understand maybe he had an off night, but it was just not an impressive show, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hate that. I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
I just had one probably while I seen the Chili Peppers in Vancouver. This was years ago. And it was like, I just expected a really crazy show, right? I thought that it was going to be like
Chili Peppers, of course.
Yeah, of course. I know. It had like a white screen with like a couple lamps in the silhouette background. They came out, blah, 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 and then we're gone. I was like, what the hell? It was really disappointing. I still like them, but
Oh, a quick caveat. I have another Stray Cats. I have to say, I saw the Stray Cats once. Oh my
I'd love
God.
to see the
What
Stray Cats.
three amazing musicians. Brian Setch is one of his guitar god, one of the best guitar players ever. I love the guy. But I wish I could remember the other two guys' names. But with just a snare drum, a hi-hat, a cymbal, and a kick drum, and a stand-up bass, and Setch's guitar plugged in with very few effects. My goodness, could these guys play? Wow. Wow is all I got to say.
Yeah, I love the Stray Cats. I had my best friend's mom loved the Nylons and the Stray Cats, and that's
Yeah.
all we
Yeah.
listened to when we were over there. Right, next song. It's like a classic.
Yes.
Okay, 8675309. I wonder how many people have called that number.
Oh, and that's partly why it's here. It's on this list for two reasons. One, it's sort of a quintessential 80s song. 80s was a wonderful decade for the marriage of rock and roll guitars, synthesizer, pop music. It blurred. It's one of the only decades where the R&B, pop music, top 40, rock and roll all merged into one and were blurred. I love it. Now we've segregated them and isolated and siloed them. But in the 80s, it was all one big mishmash of stuff. We could have, Frankie Goes to Hollywood next to Madonna, next to Springsteen, next to Stevie Ray Vaughan, next to Kenny Rogers. I mean, they were all in the same charts together. And that was wonderful about the 80s. And Tommy Two Tone was one of those because they were kind of one hit wonder. And it was such, like you said, an iconic song. Now, here's the story that makes this funny. And I put this up on my Instagram about a month or so ago, and I had tons of hits and likes. And we were playing out of the UBC frat house. And there I just threw it out there, University of British Columbia. So, and we're in the middle of our set, and this one guy we noticed in the crowd was trying desperately to get this one very young, good-looking girl to dance with him. And he kept going up to her, kept getting shot down, or his tail between his leg, go back to his buddies. It's going on for a 45-minute set. Finally, near the end of the set, he approaches her, she agrees to dance with him. So they dance a song together, and we figure that's it. We go to the next song, they're still dancing. They're going to our third song, which is the last song before we take a break. It's a slow one. They're still dancing. And we're like, oh my goodness, this guy, he went from rags to riches. He's now going big time. And so the song ends, and our bass player calls over, come over here. And just before he calls over, she pulls out a pen and writes something on his arm. And we're going, what's going on here? This is crazy. She was not having anything to do with this guy 30 minutes ago. And our bass player calls him over, and he's doing this. He's showing off. It's a phone number on his arm. You can probably see where this is going. And he's got this photo. Our bass player is the only guy that sees the number. So we're all thinking, way to go, guys. We take our 15, 20-minute break, and we start into the next set. And we play a couple songs. We can see he's off there with his buddies. He's the hero. I mean, he's just like got his chest pumped up, and everybody's like, oh, way to go. And he's like showing it off. And then, we finish the song. Bass player looks at me, Tommy Two Tone. Tommy Two Tone? We haven't played this in ages. What are you talking? What do you mean? Okay, let's roll with it, guys. Let's play Tommy Two Tone. Let's go into the song. And I'm singing lead on this one. I hit the 8675309. I look out, phone number guy. That's what we called him. Stops dead in his tracks. He looks at me, jaw drops. I sing the chorus a second time. He does this, looks at his arm, looks back at me, looks at his arm, and then just slunches down. It took a few seconds, a couple times to the chorus, and he realized what had happened. Oh my goodness, I felt so bad for the guy, but it makes for one hell of a funny story. And it's one of those stories where people say, no way, that didn't happen. I said, yes, it did. Yes, it did. And it was bloody funny as hell.
So you like such a wide range of music. Is there a musician, dead or alive, that you would love to play with?
Many. Go on and on and on. John Lennon would be the first one, though, because I'm such a huge Lennon and McCartney fan. Lennon might be my single favorite songwriter, musician. So have to go with him. B.B. King, because I was so influenced on the guitar by him. And there's Buddy Holly is another one. Oh my goodness, Buddy Holly. He was only, I think, 22 or 23. My God, how much more music was in that man if he had lived. I mean, what he put out in just a few short years was amazing. And he set such a trend that people don't realize. He was one of the first singer, songwriter, rock and roll musicians. And he was the first to play that Fender Strat and say, look how cool the Strat is, which, in my opinion, is probably the most iconic rock and roll guitar. Buddy Holly was just a massive trailblazer. Yes, the more I think about it, John Lennon first, but Buddy Holly be number 2.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Stevie Ray Vaughan, Pride and Joy. When I first heard this, I guess I was maybe 15, 16. I was just getting into the guitar seriously, and I was a big fan of Eric Clapton. Hadn't discovered B.B. King yet. I discovered him through Stevie Ray Vaughan because B.B. King was such an influence of his. But I first heard Pride and Joy, had the moment where I had a moment where my jaw dropped. And I said, how on earth does a guy get that sound and play like that? How on earth does he do that? And I bought the 45 and played it over and over again. I thought, oh my God, this is the coolest guitar sound ever. And the way this guy plays. And I can play some Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I can't do it the way he does it. I mean, every guitarist has their own style. I like to think I have my own style now, and Stevie Ray Vaughan is a little part of it, actually maybe a big part of it. He's in there. But he was one of the first that where I listened to and I said, wow, I can do something with this guitar. He was the first kind of huge inspiration to actually go that extra level with the guitar.
He seems very seamless. Like I showed that, you know, when we were listening to your playlist, I said, and my husband's name is Tyler. I'm like, honey, you don't play any Stevie Ray. He's like, oh my God, I can't play Stevie Ray. Like, fuck,
yeah,
I don't know how to play that.
Well, he used, like, for those who know much about the guitar, he would put the bottom E string, which is the big fat string, he would string that on the highest string and tighten it right up. That's how he got the huge fat sound. He'd have out of gauge strings on the top 2, which are the high strings. He'd have super fat strings there, which is massively hard to play. And that's partly how he got such a fat sound.
Yeah.
It's just amazing what he did with the guitar.
Yeah, I think so too. So on your last song,
yes,
which is crazy. So I just have to end with this because I think it makes sense. This used to be one of my favorite songs growing up. I saw her standing there.
And you know, it was mine too, Annette. It was one of the first songs I ever played in a band and sang myself. And I've always played it. I've always had such a soft spot for the song. In my opinion, it is one of the best, hands down, early rock and roll songs ever written. It's got the chord structures bang on. It's a simple, innocent melody and theme to it. It's got that driving guitar and that walking bass line that McCartney did and sort of patented. And I've always loved the song. So I really, at some point, and just recently, I wasn't planning on recording the song. I just released it a couple weeks ago, and I was never going to record it. But come December, I had an original song slated and ready to go. And I thought to myself, no, it's time for a cover song. I call myself Rock and Roll Reimagined as my tagline. What better way to sort of really promote a new wave of rock and roll by doing an old classic rock and roll song and adding a new kind of theme, twist, or feel to it. So I've put in some of my own things. I've got a very I had a good friend of mine's a drummer. And when I put together the drum track, he said, Rich, you got to change the beat to this and beat to that. And I said, well, that's great. I said, if it's going to be a pure 60s track. But if you listen to the drums, it's actually driving like a punk rock song or like a Green Day song with all kinds of toms, way too much happening on the snares and the cymbals. But that's part of what punk rock is. And I threw some rhythmic guitars that are very reminiscent of early Elvis Costello and probably The Clash, and did a solo that was kind of a Rich Chambers solo. And suddenly you have a 60s song that meets a punk rock song that meets a Green Day song, and you've just covered about 30, 40 years of rock and roll on one song.
Yeah.
And so I really think I wanted to be respectful of the original, 63 original, but I wanted to add that modern rock edge to it. And I like to think that I hit it and I got it. And what's beautiful is when I check all my YouTube analytics and Spotify analytics, it's early, but I can still start to get a certain trend. And Annette, I love the fact that there is no one age demographic that's listening to this song more than any other. I got just as many 18-year-olds listening to it as there are 65-year-olds and everybody in between. So I think I've hit something, and I'm super, super excited about, as I keep pushing the song and marketing the song, what's going to go and what's going to become of it. And hence the video. If you had a chance to watch the video, anybody, I encourage you to watch the video. We filmed it. I found an old Beatles suit on Amazon. Didn't cost me a lot of money. I used the Scotch tape and pins to hold it together, which you can't see on the black and white, which is nice. So I did half of the song in black and white, shot Ed Sullivan style, wearing a Beatles suit. And then in the solo hits, we flick into me and wearing what I would normally wear and color, and to show that transition that this song is trying to be as respectful as possible, 63 Beatles, and that first wave of British rock and roll, and that first wave of rock and roll, and also adding that modern edge to it.
Yeah.
So what I'm hoping to do is bring back all these old rockers that have been disillusioned with a lot of the music they hear nowadays because it's losing a rock and roll edge. The guitar is not prominent anymore, which I don't like. I'm a guitar player, so I want the guitar to be prominent. And I'm bringing hopefully new people into the fold to realize, hey, there's a whole cool style of music out there that we haven't really been listening to. And, let's see what it's all about.
Yeah. And I think your music is doing that. I
Thank
want
you.
you just to kind of share a little bit where our listeners can find you.
Oh, okay. Well, richchambers.com is my website. If you type Google Rich Chambers, I'm now popping up as the first thing you see. It used to be a basketball coach, and the irony behind this, a very funny story. The basketball coach named Rich Chambers actually was my teacher when I was in high school, and we know each other, and we've run into each other a few times. And he says, Rich, he says, people keep thinking I'm a singer. And I laugh and say, Rich, people keep thinking I'm a basketball coach. So it's quite funny that this other Rich Chambers on the internet lives like 30 minutes away from me, and we know each other. But I'm slowly outpacing him. I'm pushing him way down the Google algorithm. Sorry, Mr. Chambers, my old history teacher. I'm pushing you down the algorithm. So if they go Google, search my name, it'll pop up. Santa's Rockin' Band on Facebook and Instagram will come up, or hashtag Rich Chambers. I'm trying to put my hashtag Rich Chambers out there as much as I can. So wherever you type my name in somewhere, you're going to find my music popping up.
Good. I love it. Do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to leave with us today, Rich, before you leave the show?
Well, thanks for that, Annette. That's nice of you to offer that to me. And I'm going to say perseverance, determination, perseverance. Don't take no for an answer. Follow your heart and follow your dreams. Oh my goodness, we go around this thing once. Certain beliefs, some people believe other things, but you go around life once. Don't have regrets. I often say, and I put this quote up on my Facebook the other day, I said, the only thing you have to lose by going after a dream is a regret. And who the hell wants a regret anyway? So lose it. Go after it.
Great words of wisdom. Rich, thank you so much for joining us today on Music Junkies. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow Music Junkies, as well as Rich Chambers. Amazing guest. I appreciated your time, your energy, your stories, your playlist. And I absolutely love your music, and I follow you on Spotify. I'm going to continue to do that as well.
Thank you so much, Annette. I had a lot of fun talking to you. Thank you so much.